Hey everyone, in today's video we are talking all about syllables, part 2. Now, about a month or so ago, I uploaded this video right here and we talked about the first 3 most common types of syllables that students will see as they are reading the English language. And in that video, I talked about closed syllables, I talked about vowel consonant E syllables, and I talked about open syllables. And I kind of went through each one, just shared an example of what it is and how students might mark that syllable. And then I also shared some activities for you to use with your students when teaching those syllables. Now, I mentioned this in that last video, but those 3 are ones I definitely introduced towards the end of 1st grade. And in 2nd grade is where we go over the 3 I'm going to talk about today. So we would definitely review those first 3 and then I would teach them these 3 syllable types as well. If you've watched my videos before, then welcome back. And if you are new here, my name is Susan Jones. I'm a former 1st grade and K-2 literacy teacher with a master's degree in curriculum instruction, and I focus primarily on K-2. So kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade. I like to bring you the latest, greatest, best new strategies for teaching in your classroom. Just like in the other video, I will quickly go over these last 3 common syllable types. So in this video, we are going to talk about Vowel Team syllables, we are going to talk about Rcontrolled syllables, and we're going to talk about consonant plus LE syllables. After I share a little bit about each one, I'm also going to share 3 different syllable activities you can use with your students. So if you're ready to dive into this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's go. All right, let's dive into the first syllable type we will talk about in this video, and that is Vowel Team syllables. Now, I did mention this in the first syllable video I made, but when we're talking about syllables and consonant sounds and vowel sounds, it is important to note that we're talking about vowel sounds, not vowels in terms of the letters. For example, a Vowel Team syllable is a syllable that contains a vowel team. Now, that doesn't mean it's just 2 vowels next to one another. For example, long I can be made with IGH, and that has some consonants there, but that vowel team right there is still a vowel sound. IGH makes that long I sound. So just a quick note before I dive in. So simply put, a Vowel Team syllable is just one syllable that contains a vowel team. Now, in some curriculums, I know in foundations they call it a double vowel syllable type. And while I understand why, I do kind of caution against that, or at least make sure your students know that it doesn't just mean 2 vowels. It doesn't just mean 2 letters together, because a Vowel Team syllable actually can contain 2, 3, or 4 letters that make that vowel sound. For example, here's the word night, and earlier I talked about that IGH. So there are 3 letters that are actually going to make that one vowel sound. So night here is a 1-syllable word, and it is a Vowel Team syllable type because it has the IGH. Here's another example. Here's the word through. Again, that is 1 syllable, but here we have 4 letters, O-U-G-H, that make that vowel sound. So just kind of a little warning to tell your students if they are constantly hearing the double vowel, is that it could be 2, 3, or 4 letters that make that vowel sound. Now, just another quick note, some curriculums do actually separate the Vowel Team syllable type into 2 separate ones. They will have vowel teams, and then they will also have diphthongs. Personally, I like to keep them together as 1 syllable type. I find it to be a little bit easier to just combine them all. I believe foundations keeps them together, and the letters training, it also keeps them together. So up to you, but just something to look out for in case you use a curriculum that has students separate diphthongs from their vowel teams. As you teach students these syllable types, they will of course need to be familiar with vowel teams and diphthongs. So I actually do have an entire vowel teams video right here about how I teach that to my students. But in 2nd grade, when I would be teaching this, they would have already been familiar with quite a few of those vowel teams. In terms of how to mark this syllable, the way I will show you will be how Foundations does it, how their program does it, because number 1, it's a pretty popular program, and number 2, that's how I shared how the other syllables are marked in my first video. So I'll just continue with that, but I'll let you know that it does put a capital D underneath to stand for that double vowel. And just remember the caution I gave you earlier. So if you're not using Foundations, you might want to use something like VT or V or something else that maybe doesn't use the word double, but up to you. Here's an example right here with the word explain. We have a 2-syllable word. We see that EX is a closed syllable, so we scoop that. And then plain is a double vowel or vowel team type syllable with the AI circled. Here is another one, the word chimney. We have another closed syllable at the beginning with chim. We split it down in between the M and the N, and we last have knee with the EY being our double or vowel team syllable type. This process is relatively simple. I do think the hardest part of the vowel team syllable type is simply teaching all of the vowel teams, which you're going to do in your phonics block in a nice, systematic, sequential way. All right, let's talk about syllable type number 2, which is R-controlled vowel syllables. Now, just like with vowel team syllables, you're not going to have your students kind of identify these syllable types until they know what R-controlled vowels are, what they look like, sound like, etc. And I have a whole video on R-controlled vowels here if you need help with that. Simply put, an R-controlled vowel syllable type is going to be a syllable that contains an R-controlled vowel. For some examples, we have further. Here we have a 2-syllable word with 2 R-controlled vowels. We have the UR and the ER at the end. Here we have the word perform. Again, another 2-syllable word, both with R-controlled vowels. We have ER at the beginning and that OR at the end. And just for another one, here we have corner. We have the OR at the beginning and the ER at the end. Let me just keep corner up so you can see how it is marked. In Foundations, we mark these syllables with an R to show R-controlled vowels, and we again split that syllable right down the middle between the 2 consonants. So you have the COR as one syllable and NER as another. Just like the vowel team syllable type, I think this one's relatively simple once students get used to noticing those R-controlled vowels, and when they see it, they know that that's going to be its own syllable type. I think this one's even easier because unlike vowel teams, there aren't as many different ways to spell R-controlled vowels, or rather there aren't as many patterns as there are with vowel teams and diphthongs. As a quick exception that I do want my students to notice, when the R is doubled in an R-controlled vowel sound, it usually changes the sound that R-controlled vowel typically makes. For example, we have the word bark, which has that AR in it, and it normally makes that R sound, or typically makes, I should say. But when we actually go ahead and double that R underneath it, you can see the word barrel. Now, I make sure to let my students this doesn't change the syllable type, that BAR is still an R-controlled syllable. It just changes the sound, so when they hear it, it might sound a little different. And also you'll see with that double letter in the middle, I talked about the rabbit rule when we talked about closed consonants in video 1. This applies here too. We actually split it right down the double R. And when we say it aloud, we don't say barrel, it's just barrel. For another quick example, here we have the word car. Again, on top we have that typical ARR sound, but then when we double it for a word like carry, it changes that AR sound. But again, we still split that right down the 2 R's, and that first part is still an R-controlled syllable. That is just something I like to mention to my students, so when they're listening for that AR sound in a word like barrel or carry, they might not hear it. And lastly, the third common syllable type I want to talk about today is consonant plus LE syllables. Now, I do think the syllable type is a relatively easy one for students to identify for a couple different reasons. Number one, this syllable type always comes at the end of a word. And number two, it's always going to have the LE plus the consonant sound right before it. That's why it's called the consonant plus LE syllable type. There's also a common phrase I hear teachers use often when they are teaching this syllable type, and that is find LE and count back 3. That little rhyme does work most of the time, so it's a fine one to teach to your students. Here's an example of a multisyllabic word with the consonant LE syllable type. We have the word puddle. Now what students could do here is find that LE on the end, and they're like, okay, and then they go to the end of the word and count back 3 to know where the word is divided by syllables. So they go back the E, the L, and the D, and then scoop it. That DLE is going to be their syllable with the dash LE underneath it to mark. And then they have that first part there, pud, is going to be a closed syllable. Here's another example with the word eagle. Again, we have that GLE on the end, the find LE, count back 3. That is going to be your syllable with the LE underneath it. And the EA at the beginning is actually a double vowel or vowel team type syllable that we just learned about. And for one more example, here we have the word turtle. We have the TUR at the beginning is an R-controlled syllable with that UR, and then the TLE at the end is your consonant plus LE syllable at the end. Okay, so those are the other 3 syllable types of the 6 most common ones. Again, video 1 are syllable types I usually introduce at the end of 1st grade, and this video kind of rounds out the other 6, and these ones I introduced in 2nd grade. Now that you're familiar with these syllable types, I really wanted to share a few activities that will help your students both read and write multisyllabic words. Now in the first video, the first activity I shared is basically just getting students to mark up these words and these syllables. So getting them to read and notice the different types of syllables within multisyllabic words. And this one's going to be similar, but with a little twist to get students writing multisyllabic words too. All right, for activity number 1, I actually have these awesome index cards. This whole pack was like, $6 or something. I'll link it down below on Amazon. But they are dry erase, which is great. And they're great for small group. So what I like to do with these in terms of syllables is I'll give students some of the cards. And if we're practicing, let's pretend we're practicing the R-controlled syllable type, and I want students to practice, writing 2-syllable or multisyllabic words with R-controlled vowels. I will first give them a word aloud. So I'll tell my group, okay, we're going to practice writing some multisyllabic words with R-controlled vowels. We're going to write the word perfect. Can you say perfect? They'll repeat perfect. And then I'll ask my students to decide how many syllables the word perfect has to determine how many cards we'll need. So they can either clap it. I like to have my students use the chin drop strategy, and they will determine perfect has 2 syllables. So they will each need 2 of their syllable cards. Perfect. Okay, now they'll determine what are the 2 syllables. We have perfect. So per, I hear that sound. We hear P at the beginning, p, and then we have that sound. Now, can be written IR, ER, and UR. Typically, those are the 3 ways we see it, right? And for this type of activity, they're really just gonna need to practice different ones and see what kind of looks right. So we'll get down to PER, perfect. Then we have that blend on the end. And here we have a closed syllable, and here we have that R-controlled syllable. Put it together, perfect. Now, of course, if your students had a UR or an IR here, we would ask them to take a look at it, see if it looks correct, have them check in the small group. That's what you're here for. It's a perfect time to practice. But basically we follow the strategy of say the word aloud, determine how many syllables it has, and then write each syllable on its own card. That way they can see the syllables separately and we can put it together to make the word. I love using those dry erase index cards for so many different activities, but especially using them for syllables and having students read and write multisyllabic words. Easy and effective. All right, activity number 2 is to have students identify the correct syllabication of words. Now, I shared in the part 1 video of these some of the activities I have in my SJT Literacy Club, where students will go ahead and mix and match different syllables to make words, figure out if they're real and nonsense. So I do have 2 other activities I want to share that have been added to the SJT Literacy Club for each of the syllable types. First, we have a quick activity where students will have to find the correct syllabification of different words. This one is for consonant plus LE syllables, and you can see in each box they have a word like handle and cattle, and then underneath it they have 2 different ways that the word is divided by syllables. They have to use their knowledge and figure out which one is correctly done and color in that circle. It's just a quick review activity to really see what students are grasping about their knowledge in dividing those types of syllables. And it's also a nice quick check for you as the teacher to kind of see who might need a little more work with that. And lastly, another quick activity are these read and find, where students will have to blend the syllables together and then color the matching image. So here the words are already divided by the correct syllable, and they will have to go ahead, blend them together, and color in which word it's saying. So this is some simple decoding practice. So there you have a few different types of activities to really help students both read and write multisyllabic words. They can use those dry erase index cards or some syllable tiles of some kind to hear how many syllables there are and then actually write them out. They can go ahead and look at 2 different ways a word is divided and try to figure out the correct one. How is it divided correctly by syllables? And they can also practice some decoding by having the 2 syllables separate, blending them together, and seeing what word it makes. Like I mentioned earlier, all of those activities are available in the SJT Literacy Club. If you're already a member, here's what it looks like. You'll go to the phonics section, and then under phonics, we have a whole syllables section, and you can grab all the activities there. If you're not a member of the SJT Literacy Club, I will leave a link to join the waitlist down below. It is going to open up this summer for year number 2, and I'm very excited about it. So you can go down there and check it out. As always, I do hope you enjoyed this video and that you gained some new information to use with your own students. If you have any questions or comments about these syllable types, please leave them down in the comments below and I will check them out. If you did enjoy this video, please go ahead and give it a like. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you're notified of every new video. See you in the next one. Bye.